Please be seated. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good for us to be here on this, the last Sunday of Epiphany. Indeed, this Sunday is a turning point, a hinge in the church calendar, and at some points it's a hinge point or a turning point for us as an individual church too. And part of that is, so as we've said before, the season of Epiphany is one that expands or contrasts depending on the date of Easter in a particular year. So in a year such as this, when Easter comes very early in the year, Epiphany is a shorter season. But no matter how long the season, our lectionary, or the readings that are set forth for a particular Sunday, are arranged where it says the first Sunday after the Epiphany, the second Sunday after the Epiphany, the third Sunday after the Epiphany. But always, no matter how many weeks the season of Epiphany lasts, the lections for the last Sunday of Epiphany are just that. They're not the fifth week or the sixth week, they're the last Sunday after the Epiphany. Now, you might be wondering, what's the point, right? What are we getting at? But it's important to note this because these lections for us hold the transfiguration, an alignment of not only what happens with Jesus, with those disciples who are so close to him as they go up the mount and experience Christ transfigured before him, but also there appearing with him Moses, representing the law, and Elijah, the prophets, and indeed we also read in the book of Exodus of Moses' own experience of coming down from that moment on the mountain with God, transfigured, transformed by the presence of God. Now I've asked you during this season of Epiphany to be mindful of how Christ reveals himself to you, how God has revealed God's self to you in your life over the years and even in the days of this sacred season of Epiphany. And as we mark the close or the beginning of the close of this season, and we prepare our hearts and minds for the next season that begins this Wednesday, as we walk into a season of Lent, a season of self-penitence and fasting and prayer and reflection. Hey folks, this is our last chance to party. So you say your hallelujahs nice and loud today.
Amen.
And you get those amens in. You can still say amen during Lent, but we got to dial it back a little starting on Wednesday. That's what I'm saying. Now, it's also a hinge point or turning point for us at Ascension because we're entering a sequence, Lent and Holy Week and Easter. These are the last remaining things we're entering them for the first time with me as your rector. You've endured most of the church calendar with me, and we're setting sail into this final season. And in some sense, as I shared a little bit last week, I've been reflecting on the process that led me and the family here, because it was a year ago this last week that we were here interviewing. And it was a year ago yesterday that we gathered at the home of one of the search committee's members with the entire search committee to have dinner. And I'd been asked in advance if I would prepare a short evening prayer service. And then they said in a short homily of sorts. They wanted to get a sense of my style for preaching. And they said short, so I was confused. And I was also a little bit trepidatious kind of walking into this for a number of reasons. One was, as you may have noticed, as a preacher, I really value the input I get from the congregation that surrounds me. And I was going to be preaching to a very small group in a very small space, and I was wondering what that would feel like. I'm used to wandering around while I preach, and I wasn't sure that any house would have enough room for the whole search committee plus space for me to wander. And I wasn't sure if I could preach without wandering, so I was a little bit nervous. And then I went to look at the lections or the readings assigned to that particular day, and I recognized the readings of the Transfiguration. And I thought, oh great. For one, these readings require something big and bold and beautiful. Not something that fits in a living room. And what's more, I knew that everybody on the search committee would have heard not one, but probably multiple sermons over the course of their lives on the reading of the Transfiguration. And I thought, What if I contradict something that they've already heard or hold firmly? What if my exuberance for the transfiguration exceeds what they think is fitting for an Episcopal priest? Again, make sure you heard Episcopal. But all things being equal, I guess you could say that it went okay. And here I am, and glad to be here this year later with the readings of the Transfiguration before me on this, the last Sunday of the Epiphany. Now I have to say, there's something that I think connects all of this in a way as well, and it's something that we might not talk about very often in church, and that is a sense of what our dreams offer us. Now, everybody dreams at night. Now, we don't always remember the dreams that happen over the course of the night. But I have heard and I believe that it's true that if you share your dreams, then you start to remember them more. And the more you share them, the clearer your dreams will be the next day as you try to remember them. In fact, if you take that discipline a step further, and actually journal and write about what you remember about your dreams from the night before, your dreams will become more and more vivid. And even the phrase vivid dreaming is a study of this discipline by which we can learn about ourselves and about our interactions with others and about the world through the dreams that we have at night. This is and it's an interesting thing that we don't, I think, often talk about in church, despite maybe when it comes up in scriptures. Because we have a number of instances in scriptures where dreams have helped guide great leaders in making decisions. We've had dreams that have helped us to recognize the sacred or God's direction in our lives. And I think that the same is true for us now. And I think it's similar, or in kind of a parallel sense, both dreams and our prayers, the more we draw our awareness to these things, the more we pay attention, the more we're deliberate about them, the more awareness we have both of the dreams that we have at night, as well as prayers as a connection to God and God's answer to those prayers. So these disciplines are intertwined and intermixed. And now, I have to say, when you've had a chance to do this for a while, you'll look back occasionally and flip through, and the spectrum of dreams may range from the bizarre, like me playing soccer goalie in a tuxedo. It's in there somewhere. All the way to something far more serious, like a year ago, when I was awakened at 4 in the morning with a little dream that I was the rector of Ascension. Now, when I first had that dream, I had to hold it very lightly because I wasn't entirely sure what it meant yet, and I wasn't entirely sure who it was okay to share that with. And so I held it very lightly at first. I didn't dare utter it to the search committee who I met with later that morning, lest they think or know I'm some strange prophetic type who likes to... Anyway, I've said too much. I held it lightly at first. I did share it with a few folks. I got to Houston, where my next destination was anyway. I was spending a few days with my sister before going to a continuing ed event. And while I was there, she said, "Well, how do you think the interview went? How was the time at Ascension?" I said, "Oh, it was great. I think it went pretty well." And I said, I don't know what you would make of this, but I had a dream that was very clear to me that I was the rector, and I described it a little bit. And she, in her way of affirming, in her own personal way of affirming these things, she shrugged and said, "Yeah, you got that from Mom." And I didn't really know, maybe having held too many of these dreams rather tenderly for a long time, I hadn't shared that kind of a dream with very many folks before, and I recognized that indeed it is something I shared in common with our mother. And then I got to the conference, and I had a close friend who was at that same conference, and I had shared that I'd been here and I'd been interviewing. And he said, "Well, how do you think it went?" And I said, "I think it went pretty well. I feel pretty good about it." I said, "I don't know if you believe in this kind of a thing." Again, holding it somewhat tenderly. I said, "But I had a dream that I was the rector." He said, "Oh man, you got it." So we know how he feels about dreams. And I do think there is something to this sense of how we hold these things tenderly at first and maybe gradually reveal them that reminds me of this story in the gospel of the transfigured Lord. Now, let me be absolutely clear. I do not begin to make the assertion that this was a dream. I believe that the transfiguration was very real. I believe that it happened as described in the gospel account, and I believe that it was powerful and that it left those who were there changed for the rest of their lives. But I think that at moments as they came down off of that mountain, along with Moses so many generations before, they probably had to wonder to themselves in more than one moment, was that all a dream? And as they realized, and as they recognized the fact that it most certainly was not, but that it was in fact very real and very tangible and something very mysterious and yet sacred had transpired before them, they had to hold it at first very tenderly, not sure who they could share it with. And indeed, I think even as Christ is revealed to us today, we often hold these moments tenderly at first, for fear of revealing them too soon, before we might recognize the fullness of the significance of what's transpired in our lives. And I think it's okay to hold them tenderly at first, to make sure that they are safe, to make sure that they are heard by those whom we trust first, and that we might fully understand them, or at least develop a fuller understanding of them before we feel free to share them with others and the world. My brothers and sisters of faith, the Transfiguration was not an isolated moment captured in Scripture. Christ continues to be revealed to us today, sometimes in dazzling light, sometimes in our dreams, sometimes through our brothers and sisters in faith. Sometimes we have to hold those moments tenderly at first, but brothers and sisters, make no mistake about it. We must get comfortable with them, and we must find the strength within. We must encourage one another. We must eventually find the freedom so that we might share those transfiguration moments with the world around us, so that they can know the power of Christ transfigured there with all of the law and all of the prophets to lead us into a path that leads us towards God's love, mercy, and grace this day and always. Amen.